In this video, I want to address something that is a very sensitive topic, but a topic that very much needs to be addressed. And that is how to reach out to your children when you've hurt them, when you become aware of things that you've done wrong, and also if you have not been in your child's life, if you abandoned that responsibility, if that responsibility was removed from you, how do you broach that conversation with your child? How do you approach getting back in contact with them? God has told us that we are each set apart for a purpose within the body of Christ. And that purpose, again, is within the body of Christ. It's within the church. But no one can direct the church. No one can be in charge of God's church if their own house is not in order. If the very things that are right in front of you in the authority that he has given you, if you do not have your own house in order, you cannot manage God's church. You cannot be used in God's church. If we know that, then we know that it is the will of the Father that you have your house in order and that he is going to help you to do that. Now let's talk about what it means to have your house in order, because it's possible that your children might reject you, that they might say, you know what, I don't want anything to do with you. I don't even want to have this conversation with you. That's possible. So does that then mean that because your children have rejected you, that you don't have your house in order? Well, there are things that you have to do before you meet with those children, and there are things that you have to receive from God first. And so if you are doing that work, he's going to bless you, and he's going to make it clear whether your house is in order. The very first thing that needs to happen is that you need to step away from anything that you think you need to do and sit with God. You need to ask him to build you, to prepare you, to instruct you, to guide you. There's a lot that you need to be prepared for before you meet with your children. You need to be brought into a position of the heart in which you are loving and serving God, number one, understanding that all things are for his glory. If you are in him, you are going to be crushed and used to glorify him in your weakness. How many people need this instruction? How many people need to hear from another parent who made the mistake of abandoning their child, and then God built them to go back and have that conversation with that child? How many people need to hear about that experience? God will be glorified. So don't minimize who you're doing this for and what you're doing, what he's doing through you. How many parents have hurt their children, and they are given spiritual eyes to see what they've done, to understand the ways that they have impacted their children with their own sin, and they need to go back and they need to have a conversation with their child, and they need to repent, but they're terrified and they don't know where to begin. God is going to be glorified in your weakness. You are going to be crushed, and you are going to be built, and you are going to be used. So the number one thing that you need to remember is that you are a vessel for him. The next thing that needs to happen within your heart is that you need to come to a place where you are more concerned about those babies than you are about your own needs to justify yourself and save face. That you show up as a parent for their healing, that you become a vessel for their healing. Now, I was talking to someone earlier, and they said to me, okay, got it. So if they're angry, I just need to take it. Wrong posture. If you show up as a punching bag and you let them abuse you and you take the position of victim, you have now put your child in the position of perpetrator. Years ago, there were wonky therapies where people put on boxing gloves and used padded sticks to beat the snot out of each other. And that was supposed to purge their anger, get rid of their anger. And what it did is it made them more hostile and more aggressive. And it didn't get rid of their grief. And really, we don't get rid of our grief. We integrate that experience. We're able to engage in a cathartic experience of integrating, understanding, feeling our feelings, identifying what our feelings are telling us. The goal is integration. And so when you see that your children are angry, that all we want, right? And I want you to think about your own personal experience with your parents or someone who has hurt you. All we want is that acknowledgement. And yet words do not acknowledge. The fact that you're here does not acknowledge. And now that you're here, and now that I've spent all these years hoping and wishing that you were right here, now I feel all of that anger. And you know why I feel that anger? Because I feel vulnerable, because you could hurt me again, and I don't want to trust you. You hurt me, and you stole from me. And I tried to make sense of why all my life. You made it my fault. You made your feelings my fault. You made me take care of you, and I needed someone to take care of me. You understand the things your child might be feeling in front of you, that they haven't allowed themselves to feel, that you haven't allowed them to feel? All of that's going to come up. And so if you start defending yourself and you start telling them the story to save your face and to justify yourself, what do you think that's going to do? And so many parents make that mistake. They don't sort through their own feelings about what's going to come up. They don't sit with God and let Him build them before they sit in front of their child. And then they sit in front of their child and they get that kind of a reaction. And you know what they do? They blame it on their kid. Again, blame it on their kid and reject them again for having feelings. And truly, how dare us do that to our children after we've hurt them, now adding insult to injury, blaming it on them, blaming it on their other parent, anything we can do to justify ourselves. So that second thing that I want you to understand is you have to get to a point before you meet with your child where you care more about righting this wrong and being a vessel for healing for your child, being a father, being a mother, than you care about your own need for justification. Because what's your justification going to do at the end of the day? You think you're going to sit in front of God and you're going to tell Him, well, they were a rotten kid. I tried. I sat there. What do you think God's going to say to you? Did you consider for 1 second how they felt? Was that for you or was that for them? You have to get to the place where you can hear how they feel, where you can tolerate the fact that they're angry and still show up and be present, but not be a punching bag. You don't want to put yourself in the position where you're taking abuse, because what's going to happen is you put them in the position of perpetrator and you put yourself in the position of victim. And you know what that does? It brings you into your flesh. And anyone who has been victimized, they know how to shut down. They also know how to get hysterical and not feel anything. They know how to get into their flesh. So sometimes you have people who are getting hysterical. They also are shutting down. They're not feeling any of their feelings. They're not in their heart and spirit. And, we typically have women who are outwardly reacting, men who are inwardly reacting and shutting down. It's not a stereotype, it's a fact. So let's not go there. We also have men who outwardly react and women who shut down, but that's sort of the pattern, the typical pattern. So whatever you are, just identify it and own it. The problem is if you just take it and so you're shutting down, you're going into your flesh. The problem with that is that what's going to happen is you're not going to be present. You're not going to be authentic. Your child's going to be placed into the perpetrator position, because really what they want, when we say that we want acknowledgement, what we want to see is that this affected you. We don't want your words. We want to see that it affected you, that it hurt you to be separated from me, that you've been thinking about me all these years, that you're vulnerable, that you're a human being, that it hurts you to see that I'm hurt, that I matter to you. You have to be able to be vulnerable, and you can't be vulnerable in your flesh. You can't even feign that in your flesh. You've got to be able to be authentic. When you meet with your child for the first time, you need to just listen. You don't say anything. And if they're angry at the other parent, you don't also join them in that anger. You don't start talking badly about the one parent that was there. Would God condone that? God would never in any situation condone our bad talking about another person's parent, because He has taught us to honor our parents. And so if you start doing that because you have resentments against the other parent, what are you going to teach that child? You are going to present a stumbling block for them to dishonor their parent. In order to what? Justify yourself. So don't go there. Don't take abuse. It's not going to be helpful to your child. What you do is you validate, you witness. And that's something that you've been learning to do in Heart Known series in your personal relationship between your inner child and your inner parent. Your inner parent has been learning to witness your child, to tell them I see that you're really hurt. That's what you need to understand when your child is angry, that what is coming up is grief, and the anger is protecting them from being hurt by you again. At least that's what they tell themselves. That's what we all tell ourselves, right? I'm hurt, I'm outraged, I'm grieving. All of this is coming up at once. I thought this is what I wanted, but I'm confused and I'm scared, and now I'm lashing out. As the parent, I want you to remember who our Father is to us, who Jesus is to us, that Jesus poured out as the scapegoat, took on all of our pain. He took all of that on for us so that we could be healed. You, as a parent, need to be a vessel for healing. You cannot heal your child. You cannot redo anything, but you can acknowledge, and you can show them acknowledgement through authenticity, through vulnerability. But you have to sort through your feelings first. Before you enter into that meeting, you have to be built by God. You want to justify yourself? Try justifying yourself before God. He'll deal with you. He has a way of doing that. Get that bug out in relationship with him. Do your inner child work. Maybe you came from an abusive situation. Maybe you repeated the mistakes of your parents. Deal with that. All of us have our own feelings and our own wounds that we're bringing to situations, but that has no place in that conversation with your child. If you do that, you are now requiring them to be a vessel for your healing. Think about your position. Think about your position as a vessel for healing with your child, as a vessel for acknowledgement. Your child is going to have to do their own work. So you are going to have to find that accountable middle ground of being an acknowledging and vulnerable parent who says, I hurt you. I know I hurt you. When they're angry and they're lashing out, I'm so sorry that I hurt you. I'm here. Not, well, I'm here now. I hate that. I can't stand it when people say that, because what is that supposed to erase years of abandonment and pain? I'm here. I'm here with you. I'm here to listen to everything that you want to say to me, everything that you have needed to say to me all of these years. And I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to make excuses or try to justify myself. I'm here to listen to you. And then you keep your mouth shut. There are not many words that you can say in that moment. You just need to listen to what they have to say to you. And when you find it to be hard or difficult, you pray and you ask God, help me through this moment. Help me through this conversation, God. Help me to be a vessel for their healing, not their healer, not their healer. So don't step into that. Don't start trying to make sense of things for them or anything else. You're just there to witness and to acknowledge. Now, in Heart Known series, I teach you that the parent is to witness and to shepherd. You have no business shepherding them at this time. All you're doing is witnessing. You cannot shepherd someone unless you have a relationship with them, and a conversation will not constitute a relationship. You cannot shepherd until they trust you, until you have been made trustworthy. So all you're here to do is to listen to what they have been wanting to say to you, and to acknowledge that you have hurt them, and to show them that you are a human being and that this does affect you. You don't go through the story. You don't start telling them about your childhood. You don't start making excuses to justify yourself. You don't tell them the story of why you left, what happened with their mother or father. You let them know how you feel as you're listening to them talk about these things, that it hurts you to know that you hurt them, that you are committed to being present. And then you make sure that you do that you are emotionally present for them, because that's the only present there is. Physical presence without emotional presence is abandonment. And then you make sure that you're consistent. Now, you can't do any of these things until you've been built by God. And part of what's happening as you're being built by God is He's also preparing them. He's preparing you and He's preparing them, even though they don't know that they're going to hear from you. And I cannot tell you how long it's going to take for Him to prepare you, when what that's going to entail. Only God can do that. Earlier today, I uploaded a video regarding how to correctly use Heart Known series. And one of the things that I said is that Heart Known series can't build you. You can only be built by God. Heart Known series cannot heal you. All it can do is provide a framework so that you understand what's required of you. Likewise, I cannot build or heal you. Heart Known series cannot build or heal you. All we can do is provide a framework to help you to understand what is required of you based on biblical instruction. You got to be built by God. And if you are built by God and you truly, I recommend doing a fast, enter into a fast to kick that off. If you are truly receiving from him, he's going to bless you. Even if your child rejects you, he's going to bless you. You have to get your own house in order if you are going to serve God. You cannot manage his church if your house is not in order. And so what often happens with parents, in this situation, they feel so overwhelmed. They feel like such a failure, and they graduate themselves to the position of managing God's church, and they start going out and trying to work with others when the very things that are right in front of them, the very things that God has put on their plate, the authority that he's given them is being totally disregarded. And what that person is doing is they're hiding out in works. They're hiding out in works that they don't even have the ability, they have not been activated in. And they don't have the ability to do that because their own house is not in order. And so they start doing things like giving advice to people that they have no business giving. And they're working out their self-justification by working with others. And it's not ordained by God. You see this happening in counterfeit Christianity all the time. Pastors who have ministries or in their church, so-called ministries, that they're still working out, or rather avoiding working out within themselves. So they're working it out through that ministry. How can they possibly lead correctly? And I've talked with you about the compulsion to repeat as well. That, it's a psychologically coined term, right, by Alice Miller. But it is a thing that when you are not resolving certain things within yourself, certain unresolved suffering, you're going to act that out on other people as an attempt to work it out, as an attempt to integrate. But you can't integrate it because you're not actually addressing the real issue that's inside of you. So this becomes a real problem, and God does not bless that work. He's not going to bear fruit through something that has not been built by him, that we stepped aside and started enacting our own idea of a ministry in order to justify ourselves that we're in him and that we're doing what we're supposed to do. We simply cannot be doing that. But I want you to think again about the example that I said earlier on in the video, which is, and this is the pattern of God, he's going to use the lampstand that he built in you. You don't need to go pull from anyone else's lampstand. You don't need to make up a ministry. He's already building something in you, or at least attempting to, through your experiences. And so if you are going to go through this process of building and crushing and being letting him be glorified through your weakness, how amazing is it going to be when he uses the very experiences that have been so painful in your own life in order to be glorified and in order to save other people and other relationships between parents and children? How amazing will that be? You got to start in your own backyard. You cannot go into somebody else's backyard and start taking from what they have done or making up a ministry. That's what counterfeit Christianity does. And so, I'm telling you this message also with a lot of understanding and compassion, that I realize that that's what we have been taught, that we're supposed to figure out what we're supposed to be doing. And I'm here to tell you, you can't figure anything out. I can't figure anything out. I have to receive that from him because he's the one who set me apart for a purpose before the creation of the earth. How would I have any ability to know what that is if I'm not receiving it through him? If he's not building it through the very experiences that he has sent in my life? He's sovereign and he knows what he's doing. And here's another thing that I want to remind you of is that how many times am I sharing with you my own sin? So much of what God has me doing involves me sharing my sin, me being exposed and vulnerable in order for the church to be built up. That's the pattern of God. In your weakness, he's made strong. We don't exalt ourselves. In our weakness, he's made strong. In our weakness, he will build us. So I hope that you'll hold that close to your heart and that you will understand that you are always being used for a purpose if you are in him. You are always being built for a purpose. And so as you're being built and you're being crushed and you're going through the hard times, you remember that he is going to use this and that he does not give grief willingly. He will use every single thing if you are willing to be made weak so that he can be made strong. Thank you for listening. God bless you. If you have any questions about this topic, because I realize that this is a very sensitive topic and it has a lot of components and aspects, and I want to be available here to support you. So feel free to write in the comments section or to message me personally. I'll see you in the next video.